Okay, so here's a thought. What if all this relentless positivity we hear about, just think happy thoughts, good vibes only. What if it's actually, well, setting us up to fail?
That really hits on something, doesn't it? We're just bombarded with this idea that optimism is the only way.
Exactly. But then you look at people who, you know, consistently pull off amazing things, and,
Yeah.
well, sometimes their strategy looks a bit different, almost the opposite,
That's such a crucial point. This constant push for positivity can feel a little, I don't know, shallow sometimes, like you're supposed to just ignore potential problems.
right? Instead of actually preparing for them.
And what's really fascinating is how many truly high achievers, people leading huge companies or in really high stakes fields, they seem to get this hidden power, the power in thinking about what might go wrong.
Totally. Like Steve Jobs, right?
Yeah.
Not exactly known for radiating sunshine.
No.
But that intense focus he had on potential flaws, on what wasn't perfect yet in Apple products. Legendary.
Or Warren Buffett. He's famous for looking at investments by imagining the absolute worst thing that could happen first.
And the Navy SEALs. I mean, their whole training seems built around visualizing every single thing that could possibly go wrong on a mission.
Mm-hmm. Meticulously planning for failure points.
So it really makes you think, doesn't it? Is this societal obsession with only positive thinking actually a bit of a blind spot? Could there be a real edge in, well, negative thinking?
And that really brings up this vital piece about planning effectively. If you're just blindly optimistic, it can lead to a sort of, well, cognitive laziness almost.
How so?
Well, if you just assume everything's going to work out perfectly,
Right.
you're probably less likely to put in the hard yards, to really anticipate the challenges, figure out backup plans.
Like thinking you'll ace an exam without studying just because you feel good about it?
Exactly that. So, okay, let's dig into this a bit more because the idea that positive thinking could actually hinder us feels, well, it goes against everything we're told. Why does that happen?
Yeah.
Well, for one thing, it can create a real disconnect from reality. If you're always expecting the best, you might be completely floored when things inevitably don't go 100% according to plan.
Yeah, I'm prepared.
Totally unprepared. Imagine basing your entire strategy on perfect weather, perfect market conditions.
Well,
The minute things shift, you're in trouble. It's linked to something called optimism bias.
optimism bias. Right?
Yeah, it's this tendency we have to overestimate how likely good things are to happen and underestimate the bad stuff. The kind of techniques we're talking about, this negative thinking, can actually help counteract that bias.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. It's like going on a long hike, convinced, the way, not even checking the map.
Right.
And then, boom, you're lost.
Yeah.
Because you didn't consider you might get lost.
Exactly. And there's more to it. This unwavering positivity, it can actually weirdly diminish your drive.
Really? How?
Well, think about it. If you're already convinced you're going to succeed, where's the urgency? Where's the fire to really push yourself, to innovate, to overcome the hurdles that will pop up?
Huh. The assumed success kind of takes a wind out of your sails.
It can, yeah. It almost steals your motivation. And maybe the biggest thing is resilience. When setbacks do happen and they always do, a purely optimistic mindset doesn't give you much to fall back on, the disappointment can feel crushing because you just weren't prepared for it emotionally or practically.
You mentioned some research earlier, didn't you? Something about positive fantasies versus, like, actual results.
Yes, exactly. It's fascinating stuff. Researchers looked into this, published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, and they found something really interesting. When people just vividly imagine their perfect outcome, really fantasized about it, without also thinking through the steps and the potential roadblocks,
Uh-huh.
they actually put in less effort and achieved less.
Wow. So the daydreaming replaced the doing.
It's almost like the mental satisfaction of the fantasy took the place of the actual work needed. They contrasted this with something they called defensive pessimism.
Defensive pessimism. Sounds kind of contradictory.
It does, but it's a strategy where people deliberately think about potential negative outcomes, not to wallow in them, but specifically to prepare for them. And paradoxically, this often leads to better performance.
Why does that work?
It seems to work partly because it channels that anxiety, that worry about things going wrong, into proactive problem solving. Instead of freezing up, you start planning.
Okay, so this isn't about just being a doom and gloom person, seeing the glass half empty all the time.
Not at all. No.
It's more like a strategic way of dealing with potential problems.
Mm.
So how do we actually do that? How do we use this negative thinking as a practical tool.
Precisely. It's strategic foresight, not negativity for its own sake. One really effective method is called the pre-mortem.
Pre-mortem, like before it's dead.
Kind of.
Right.
Before you even start a big project or go after a major goal, you take some time, maybe with your team, maybe just yourself, and you ask this critical question. Okay, let's imagine it's 6 months from now, and this project has completely spectacularly failed. Why? What went wrong?
Huh.
By deliberately identifying all those potential reasons for failure before they happen, you can then take concrete steps to prevent them or mitigate them. It's great for getting past groupthink, too. Makes it safer to voice concerns early on.
That's brilliant. It's like working backwards from failure to engineer success. I like that.
Yeah.
What else? Are there other ways these effective thinkers look at the negatives?
Definitely. Another really powerful technique, this one draws a bit from old Stoic philosophy, is called fear setting.
Fear setting.
Yeah, it's a structured way to really look your anxieties in the eye. You take a specific fear you have, maybe about a decision or a risk,
Okay.
and you break it down systematically. First, what is the absolute worst thing that could possibly happen if this fear comes true? Really spell it out.
Right.
Second, what steps could you take to repair the damage or just cope if that worst case scenario actually happened?
Mitigation.
Exactly. And then third, what's the most likely outcome, realistically? Often, when you dissect your fears like this very logically, they lose a lot of their emotional power over you.
Because our brains tend to blow things out of proportion.
Totally. We often overestimate how likely the bad stuff is and how bad it would actually be. This exercise brings things back down to earth.
So it's a way to take the emotional sting out of fear by just looking at it logically. Makes sense.
Precisely. And building on that same Stoic idea is another practice, sometimes called negative visualization, or the fancier term is premeditatio malorum.
Premeditation of evils. Sounds a bit dark.
It sounds gloomy, I know. But the core idea isn't about being morbid. It's about regularly, maybe just briefly, contemplating the potential loss of the things you value, your health, your job, your relationships, opportunities.
Why would you do that?
It does two main things. One, it cultivates a much deeper sense of gratitude for what you have right now in this moment. You stop taking things for granted. And two, it builds mental resilience. It prepares you mentally for the possibility of loss, making you less fragile when difficulties do arise.
That's a really interesting flip. Instead of always chasing the next thing, you're focusing on appreciating what's already here by imagining its absence.
Exactly that. It sharpens your appreciation for the present. And, okay, one final tool, really useful when facing decisions or challenges, is the 1-0-10-10 rule.
1-0-10-10, what's that?
You just ask yourself 3 questions about the decision or the problem that's stressing you out. How will I feel about this in 10 days?
Okay.
How will I feel about it in 10 months? And how will I feel about it in 10 years?
Perspective.
Right. Often, the things that cause us massive stress in the immediate moment tend to shrink considerably when you look at them through that longer time frame. It helps put things in perspective, stops you getting totally bogged down by short-term anxiety.
So yeah, gaining that broader view, realizing a lot of our worries are actually pretty temporary. Okay, now, you mentioned earlier that some really successful people, even companies, use these kinds of negative thinking approaches. Can you give us some more concrete examples?
Absolutely. Let's take Amazon. Apparently, Jeff Bezos requires his teams for new projects to write a press release. But it's a press release announcing the project's failure.
Before it even launches.
Before it launches. It forces them to think really critically about every potential weakness, every reason it might fail, and address those issues proactively right from the start.
Wow, that is a bold strategy. Instead of just hyping the potential success, they're actively dissecting the potential failure.
Exactly. Or think about Elon Musk and SpaceX, especially in the early days before the Falcon 1 rocket finally launched successfully.
Yeah.
They reportedly ran just countless simulations focusing specifically on failure scenarios. What could go wrong with the engines, the guidance, the weather, everything.
So that meticulous preparation, diving deep into all the ways it could go wrong.
Massively increased their odds of success in what is, let's face it, an incredibly high-risk game.
So by imagining all the ways they could fail, they actually boosted their chances of succeeding. That's such a fascinating paradox.
It really is. And you see it even in, say, elite sports. Kobe Bryant, for example. He talked about mentally rehearsing himself missing crucial shots.
Losing them. Why?
It wasn't about expecting to fail or wanting to fail. It was about preparing himself mentally for that possibility, understanding how he would react, what he would do next. It took the fear out of the moment, reduced the pressure when he was actually taking that game-winning shot.
Okay.
The common thread here isn't about attracting bad luck or being negative. It's about actively working to prevent bad outcomes through really thorough preparation and thoughtful consideration of what could go wrong.
Okay, wow. This has definitely shifted how I think about that constant be positive message we always hear. So for our listeners who are maybe intrigued by this, who want to try it out, how can they start incorporating this? You mentioned a challenge.
Yes. So to help you actually experience the shift, I propose a really simple 7-day negative thinking challenge.
Okay, I'm listening.
For the next week, just commit to this. Take 2 minutes each morning, just 2 minutes, and deliberately think about the potential challenges, setbacks, or things that could go wrong in your day ahead.
Okay, visualize the potential problems.
But don't just stop there. Don't just dwell on them.
Yeah.
Actively brainstorm 1 or 2 possible solutions or ways you could mitigate those risks if they actually happen.
So problem and solution.
Exactly. Then, each evening, just take another minute or 2 to reflect. How did that morning practice actually influence your day? Did you feel more prepared? Did you handle something differently because you'd already thought about it? Were you more proactive?
So it's a short, manageable daily exercise. Anticipation and problem solving, basically.
Precisely. Because, look, optimism definitely has its place. Hope is important. But it's not a strategy by itself.
Right.
It's not a substitute for a solid plan, for foresight, for the ability to adapt when things don't go as expected. Real strength, real effectiveness often comes from looking at the whole picture, the good, the bad, potential pitfalls, and preparing accordingly.
So the big takeaway isn't become a pessimist. Far from it. It's more like become a prepared realist, a resilient realist,
Well put.
to maybe embrace a more, I don't know,
Yeah.
a more thoughtful way of thinking. One that doesn't just shy away from potential difficulties, but actually looks at them, understands them, so you can navigate them better.
Yeah.
Definitely gives you something to chew on.